welcome to Procurement Pivots, the podcast for procurement professionals wanting to navigate change successfully and create career success on your own terms. I'm Donna Bowden, procurement career coach and founder of Narrate Your Career.
And I'm Laura Sellers, executive coach for procurement and founder of Coaching for Procurement. And between us, we bring almost 25 years of supporting and working with procurement professionals. And it's fair to say we've navigated many of our own career pivots along the way. And now we're here to help you do the same.
Each episode will share practical strategies, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you confidently tackle the changes and challenges in your procurement career.
Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Procurement Pivots podcast. And great to see you again, Donna.
Hello, how are you? Loving your new hair as well.
Oh, thank you very much. Need to update my photos now. It'll last until the summer and I'll change it again. This week's episode is focused on the topic of triggers, which is quite a complex topic on the surface. So we're going to bring up a couple of examples that we work with in our coaching sessions. And yeah, Donna, where would you like to start with this?
Well, I think when we were talking earlier, when we were kind of discussing this as a topic, actually, there are some triggers that I guess come up more frequently than others. But I think we were talking that yes, some triggers can be external type triggers, whereas others are internal. So should we maybe start with some of those kind of the external things that happen that people can feel quite triggered by quite frequently?
Yeah, great idea.
Cool. Do you want to start, or do you want me
Yeah.
to?
No, I'll go for it if you
Oh,
like.
yeah.
So when we say external, we're talking about the things that are outside of ourselves, where somebody might come along and trigger some kind of reaction within us, or it could be an external factor such as the job market, which I know obviously you work with quite a lot. For me, a lot of the time, it's a lot of change that's happening with my clients in their businesses, where there's been restructures. And so I think the first one for me would be around the environmental triggers, and that certainly comes up a lot in my coaching conversations. So yeah, what I mean by that is around, like I say, the restructures or something has changed that is impacting the procurement team or the leader, and they want to be able to navigate that with confidence. And so when we think about those external triggers, when we're in a conversation, and this could be with a team, by the way, I do a lot of this stuff with teams, not just on a one-to-one basis. We just we start with, well, what is going on? Put it all out there, brainstorm it all, get it all out on the table. And then we start to look for patterns between what's going on with those environmental triggers. So, I mean, I think something that always comes up that's a pattern in those environmental triggers is the dynamics between different people, the relationships. This could be between procurement and different functions. So it's a really interesting trigger for me because I like to really get under the skin of it and understand, well, where's that coming from? Who's bringing it? What's that? What is that triggering in terms of what that means for your workload, for your task, for your mindset? So, and yeah, because I mean, change is constant, isn't it? And how we deal with change is different to all of us. But I don't know if that resonates because this must come up in conversations with your clients, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're talking about the external, I think there's a few kind of external. Sorry, I'm going to just have to close my blind because for anyone watching, you'll be able to see that suddenly the sun's just come out and I literally can't see a thing. So sorry,
Donna
one
just got a
second.
halo. Donna just got a halo above her head.
Ta-da-da!
I mean, I always did think you were angelic, Donna.
Oh, thank you so much. But how annoying! I'm like literally, we all wait for the sun to come out. It's like, yeah,
Oh, I
that's
know. It's
now
very
back in a
dark here
dark
up
room.
north. Very
Um,
dark.
yeah, so I think yeah, there's a few topics I would say that I've sort of really seen a lot over the last 18 months or so that when we start talking about these kind of external topics, like a lot of people have quite an emotional response to them.
Mm.
So I think, look, the obviously the job market is very relevant to a lot of the people that I'm working with. And so, just the whole navigation of the job market as it is in today's world, I think can be quite triggering for people in so many different ways, like the worry, the concern, the fear of failure, the kind of the not hearing back, etc. And then it's like, kind of because maybe if you're experiencing some of those frustrations, then it just kind of it just yeah provokes this, like, I guess, reaction in you because it's happened this way before. You just automatically think that's going to be the outcome again. LinkedIn, I know we speak about LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is one of those topics that probably gets one of the most kind of emotive response often. And it is triggering for some people. Lots of people, yeah, they really like, they have quite strong views actually. I've just come out of a group session with some procurement leaders, and actually today's topic we were talking quite heavily on LinkedIn. And I always will start with people by saying, right, tell me about how do you feel about LinkedIn. And it's the responses can be really quite emotive. And I think a lot of people, yeah, they do get really triggered by things that happen on LinkedIn. We've spoken about it everywhere. You've spoken about the memes previously. I think a lot of people feel quite triggered about certain things they see people posting about. Sometimes they're seeing people that they know post about things, and it does feel like there's some exaggeration going on, and some of it doesn't feel like it's that accurate, etc. So yeah, I think LinkedIn is definitely one of those topics, as is networking as well. And I kind of support a lot of my clients with like developing their network relationships, etc. But actually, even as a word, the word networking like just totally fills some people with so much dread and worry and anxiety that they just then totally back away from any forms of networking because they've kind of associated this picture of having to go to events with strangers and going up and introducing themselves to people they don't know. Like, they just associate that with any form of networking. So yeah, I think there's some of the, like, the external ones that I would say come up really frequently, and they are quite triggering for a lot of people.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of external factors, isn't there, at the end of the day, and so much of it is outside of our control.
Yes,
And I mean, we talk about this a lot, don't we, around the
we
what's within
do.
our control, what's isn't, because overwhelm is such a huge part of this because if we can feel overwhelmed by everything that's going on in the market, in the industry, in the world. There's lots of different environmental factors, like
Yeah,
I was saying before, and even through an organizational lens, that can be quite a lot. But I like what you said then about, I think I like it. I'm paying attention to what you're saying about the reaction it brings up within people. I don't, say I don't like it. Some of
no,
these feelings are really uncomfortable, but I think that's where it's really interesting because when we bring it into the consciousness of what it is we're experiencing as a result of these external triggers, that's where the power to change things comes in to at first notice what that feeling is
yeah,
that's within you. I mean, you used LinkedIn as an example earlier. For however many you had on that group there, were they all the same reactions or did they all have different ones? Because that is very telling in itself in terms of the uniqueness of how we all feel about these
mm,
external triggers and what they bring up within us.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, to use that example, I would, yeah, it was mixed actually. There was
Mm,
very, very different, very different responses from, very much, I really, really don't like it, but I want to learn to use it to better
mm,
effect. So, but I really don't like it, to I am a fan of it and its benefits, but I don't really know how to use it properly. But I think
mm,
it's like, it is an interesting one because, I now recognise that actually LinkedIn for some people can be a trigger. And I didn't really recognize that a few years ago, so actually when I was operating as a recruiter, LinkedIn would come up as part of the like, how do you help your candidate to get a job, etc. But I didn't really appreciate that sort of emotional response and emotional attachment that a lot of people have
Mm.
to it. And now I think like LinkedIn on the surface doesn't isn't a deep subject, but actually, like when we work together, we are doing quite like reflective work to start off with. It's not, I think people are coming thinking, oh, Donna's just going to train me on what I need to do on LinkedIn, but actually, how you feel about it is the start point, and it's kind of yeah, how do you feel about it, and
Mm.
um, what do you want to get from it? And then it's kind of starting to look at how can you then use it. But I think that like start point is almost like, yeah, for yourself, like recognizing, how does that thing actually make you feel and why?
Yeah, and I really want to draw attention to what you said there about the emotional response, because I think we've been taught for so many years that emotions don't belong in the workplace, whereas actually they are at the heart of everything that we do, and how we deal with them um, will decide and determine how we respond to these particular triggers. And thanks for sharing those experiences around that, because I think it's important that other people know that they're not alone in those
Yeah,
feelings. And that's why we're trying to bring to life, but maintaining that confidentiality of the experiences that our clients have and people within our network. But something that I was thinking about when it comes to these external triggers, and I mentioned about the dynamics with
yeah,
people, is that when we attach feelings to certain functions and roles, so with finance or with marketing, I've brought
yeah,
marketing a different one before, and so we have that function or that type of stakeholder as a representative of how we might feel about certain things or certain people. So we sort of like label it as oh, they're a difficult stakeholder,
yeah,
or this is going to be a different challenge. This is going to be the same challenge that I had a few years ago. Just like what you were saying about if they've experienced one particular problem in their search before, that
yeah,
is going to happen again.
yeah,
So this is where it's so important to recognize again, have that awareness of what's going on with you, because that's when we can
yeah,
change it. You're never going to be able to change all of the organizational changes or the job market changes. You're not
yeah,
going to be able to control those things, but we can be really curious and reflective, like you say, about what's going on and how's that bringing about a feeling within me. And that's the clue and that's the key to me.
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. Um, And then sort of internally then, so what are more of the sort of the internal triggers that you see in the work that you do with your clients, would you say?
Well, behaviorally, and I know I've mentioned this before, so in another podcast, and I can't remember which one it was, which episode, but around the triggers that we go into when we're under stress.
Mm,
When we're under pressure, we resort to certain behavioral patterns, once that stress has been triggered. So a great one on a team example, we I was working with a team on, was around their pursuit of being perfect, being really,
right.
really good at what they do. And we were determining the difference between being excellent and being perfect.
Okay.
And so we were talking about how perfectionism shows up as a stress response and not just in high performance. So when is perfectionism something that can be adaptive, something that we can actually use to our strengths, because having high standards is a
Yeah.
great thing to have.
Yeah.
So and to have being able to spot those little tiny details in a contract is what makes a contract manager really vital, contract manager's role very vital.
Yeah.
But when it slips into a stress response, that's the trigger that I'm interested in, because you don't always have to be perfect to do a good job and to be
Mm,
excellent. So that's definitely the work I like to do in a team sense. That was with a small team, and obviously I do that on individual roles as well. But the more you understand about what those stress responses are, is where the power is to change it. So we do some exploratory work if it's
yeah.
part of their coaching goal to explore that. I love it. I think when we have that awareness, we learn so much, and also when we understand what those triggers are, we realize that's a symptom of something else, and it's about
Mm,
changing the trigger itself or responding differently to that trigger. So we were then talking about in the team about how actually they're so afraid of not knowing the answer because people don't have to engage with procurement. It's not mandated in their organization. So they want to know all the answers, which drives the need to be perfect. So we were
mm,
talking about, well, how else could we say that we don't know the answers, but how can we still maintain that credibility
yeah.
and be really good at what we do? So went into a bit of a deep exploration there, but that's for me where the internal triggers are really important behaviorally, that to know exactly when it's being fed individually, but also how it might impact you all as a team together.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for me as well, like, I mean, even that word triggers, like, we use it in so many different capacities, don't we? Like,
Mm.
actually, I think what can sometimes be really helpful for individuals is, um, like, particularly, so, a lot of the clients that I'm working with, it is around, helping them to enjoy their work more. Maybe there's a move, helping them to find that next role. But I think, like, recognizing your own triggers at certain moments in your life, in your career, can be incredibly helpful. So for some people that I've worked with, they've recognized that actually when they look back in their past, like, sometimes there were patterns or signs or behaviors that kind of, it's the, like, symptom of how they're feeling. So it's almost kind of recognizing what are some of those trigger signs, almost, that
Mm.
things do need to change. So one of the ones that comes up very frequently, when people are deeply unhappy in their work, like, often they say, I'm lying awake at night, it's that Sunday night syndrome, like, I'm okay at the weekend, and then all of a sudden it's like reality kicks in, I'm going back to work, heart kind of sinking type feeling. And so, for some people, they now recognize that that is the kind of, it's almost like the trigger, the sign that they need to know to ask themselves some questions about, okay, well, what is that telling me, and what do I need to now do about it?
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, like, that trigger word itself, I think, is used in quite different capacities, but it can be really, really helpful to kind of almost recognize those internal signs as a sort of trigger point to know that some kind of change is probably needed.
Mm. Yeah, great point. And again, recognizing the trigger so that you can choose a different response. And we talk a lot about widening the gap between a reaction and a response, like so that you can make that choice because we have default reactions within us because they're the strategies that we've learned growing up or adapting in a workplace that we've had. So it takes some work sometimes to recognize, oh, okay, that's what's going on. It's not this thing that's triggering me, it's actually
Yeah.
this thing. So once you are able to distinguish what those triggers and those symptoms are and what the initial
Mm,
cause is, then you can choose a different response. And some of these can be really quick wins, right? We're talking about deep stuff, but some of them are a surface level change, but other ones can be more transformative. And I think being able to have that space to reflect and explore with no judgment
mm.
from a coach is really, really valuable. And it's also got long-term ripple effects, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely, definitely. So, what would what would some of the takeaways be, do you think, for people that are kind of, should we maybe have a look at breaking it down, the external versus the
Yeah,
internal, do you think?
yeah.
So externally then, we've said a lot of external factors, we can't necessarily change the thing that's happened. It's not necessarily within our control. So, what do you think, like, what would you advise to someone that is kind of getting triggered by some of these, external factors, whether they're environmental or marketplace type factors?
I think it's first of all is be aware of the exact trigger. So if when we're talking about external, we can sort of put all that ownership into the hands of others or blame, like it's this thing that's happening that's causing me problems. That may or may not be true. Right. Okay. So,
Mm,
obviously it's very subjective, but recognize what particular trigger is causing it because it could be that something's happened at the start of the day that has dictated how the rest of your day's gone. And it all started with that tricky conversation with somebody, like a stakeholder or something, or you've seen something on LinkedIn, like you've mentioned before, and that's triggered you. But
mm,
also, but so to be able to name it, you can then create some distance between it rather than carrying it with you for the rest of the day.
mm,
So that would be the first piece of advice that I would give is just to try and interrogate what it is if you can. But again, it's having that self-awareness to go that to know that you've been triggered by something because sometimes it's so
yeah.
automatic. How would you what would be your first piece of advice before we move into the internal?
I think it's just coming back to this point that we say it, we've said it on a lot of the episodes, but it is working out like what are the things that you can control, like what is your response to that, that external factor, and yeah, so it's I guess it's working out, what can you influence and what can't you influence, and then it's kind of working out even, you know, despite those changes or those factors that are happening, like how are you going to approach it?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's when I guess it comes into the internal, isn't it? By the way, it's a great tool for this for anyone who's listening. It's by Stephen Covey and it's called the Circles of Influence. And it's around brainstorming everything and putting them into the three circles of what you can control, what's in your concern, and what's in the influence circle. So yeah, look that one up, Stephen Covey. But yeah, I think leaning into the internal is to then being able to recognize what trigger or what response that is creating within you. So let's use your LinkedIn example. If they've seen something and they're not sure it's accurate, what is that doing to you and how is that impacting the rest of your day? Do we then need to put some measures in where you then only look at it at certain times of the
Mm,
day? Or, again, it's you can't control what people are going to put out there, but you can notice your response and
yeah,
choose how to engage with it.
yeah. And I think it's just like a lot of this does come down to like almost having the space to notice this stuff, isn't it? It's like, in the course of a day, loads of different stuff is going to happen. And it's just having that, yeah, I think it's the space to reflect and to recognize like actually what was that thing. So if, like to use your example of the day that then suddenly like the day goes into decline, you almost need to have that moment where you sit there and say to yourself, like, what was it that started that kind of downward trend? And, you could just accept it and then go to bed and start the next day afresh. But actually, like sometimes this is where things like I think journaling and just
Hmm.
giving yourself the space to really kind of like to identify it, because for a lot of people, for a lot of us, like that there are certain things that will trigger us, but you've got to have the space to recognize that that is the thing that
Mm.
repeatedly triggers you. And like you say, then it's kind of working out, okay, well, if I know that sort of thing does trigger me, maybe why does it, and working on the why, but then also like how can you put yourself in scenarios where you're either being affected by it less or getting less exposure to that type of scenario as well.
Yeah, or preparing yourself if you can't avoid that trigger is another
Yeah.
good one. I'm just thinking about an example that I was witness to, and it was quite a while ago now, but it brings to life that point really well. Is where we were sat in a meeting, loads of categories all together, and then somebody fired like a parting shot at one of the other categories about them being in an ivory tower, and it really set the tone for the rest of the meeting. And because some people agreed, some people didn't, and so I think what's really interesting there is around well. what does that do for the rest of the meeting? You know, how does that then
Mm,
impact the way that people interact with each other? So I think that's a, you know, it's a really good example of that thing about how has it set the tone? You know, what response is it creating within us? Can we pinpoint where it was? And if
yeah,
you can prepare yourself, how can you go in to like a meeting armed with your responses to go, okay, that wasn't about me, that's them, but you know, and just being able to create that distance, I think really, really
yeah,
helps.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think just like, I mean, for all of us included, like recognizing those things that we are more likely to be triggered by, and then like building our own toolkit to be able to kind of handle how we then cope with that. It's just, yeah, it can make such a massive difference, kind of
Yeah.
massive, massive
Yeah.
difference.
It really can. It really can. I mean, you know, triggers are, I mean, the word in itself is triggering, you know, but I think it's something around the personal element is the bit that is going to make the difference for you. The
Mm,
internal triggers, understanding yourself. It could even be starting to pick up some personal development books, right? Or just
yeah,
even engaging in tools like this, like the podcast, just to be aware that this is not just something that's happening to you as an individual, that they belong to all of us. We all have them.
yeah. But having them then sometimes like they can just form these massive blockers, can't they? And really stop us from moving forward or really hold us back in certain ways as well. So,
Yeah.
you know, actually kind of working out how to deal with it can really then enable you to kind of move forward, you know, in a growth kind of, you know, growth sense as well. So,
And
um,
that's what we're about then, isn't it? You know, so I think
totally.
it's around that recognizing it and then helping you to move forward with it. And then you've got someone who's an external sounding board and someone who can help you take that first step and the next step.
Definitely, definitely. Well, thank you everyone, as always, for tuning in. It's great to have you here. And yeah, yeah, it's been great this year actually, kind of coming on and you know and sharing these really common topics that come up. Things are going to be changing a little bit over the next few episodes. So, you know, as we move into the new year, there's a slightly different theme for some of the episodes. So keep tuning in. And as always, we'd love your feedback. So please do let us know what's resonating, what's not, and how we can kind of keep growing the Procurement Pivots podcast for all of you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, everyone. Take
All
care.
right, take care. Bye bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Procurement Pivots. We hope today's episode gave you actionable tips to help you to continue to move forward in your procurement career.
If you enjoyed the conversation, follow our episodes, share them with others, and please support us on our social media channels for others that might be interested to tune in.